Hey ladies, welcome back to the show. On our episode today, we are going to talk and continue our series about mental health blocks. On our Health Tip Tuesday today, we are going to talk about this idea of being overwhelmed when it comes to making any changes related to health, wellness, and self-care. I feel like there is so much information out there that just that constant barrage of information and misinformation makes it really difficult to decide what you want to do. So you've made up your mind that you want to do something, but then you're overwhelmed as shit to figure out how to take the steps to actually get there. And you may actually just be in your head because you're like, what the fuck? How do I even start? And so I think sometimes what ends up happening, at least for me, and this could be for you too, is that you're almost like you've made this decision that you want to have this change and you're ready to do it, but you just don't have anywhere to start. And so what happens typically is you probably go online and then you find some information there, and maybe you've talked to your friends and then they've used different things that have improved their health. And then you have all this information and you're like, okay, like I have no idea where to begin. So we're going to talk about that today, and this sense of overwhelm when it comes to making decisions about your health. Typically, I feel like with being the sense of overwhelm, it's this idea of like, maybe you're even in a place of being paralyzed because you don't know where to start. And so when it comes to our health goals, some examples that I can think of that may be hindering you from moving forward because you feel overwhelmed could be like getting some health screenings, trying to figure out, are you supposed to get blood work? Like you've now made the decision that you want to do something healthier for yourself, but like what is next? Do you start looking at the way that you've eaten? Do you start to look at exercise? What happens? Do you need to get blood work from your doctor? Do you need to get a mammogram because we're getting to that age where it's going to be more important? And so it can also be a way, having this sense of overwhelm can also be a way that it keeps you really scared because you just don't quite know what to do. Does that sound familiar to you? Yeah. So what do you do when you are feeling this sense of overwhelm, right? So I think one of the first things you do is really just write down the things. And I know this is so annoying, but I really do believe that having some kind of plan or just getting the stuff that you're overwhelmed about just kind of out of your head. I think for me, I resist this step because it feels really hard. And it's almost like I feel like I'm not deserving in some weird way to like feel good, even though I know if I get it out of my head, I'll feel better. But one of the things that getting it out of your head does is it makes it like real, and it really verifies what it is that you want to do and what you're trying to accomplish. And it's important to kind of have an idea when you're trying to create a plan of what's most important to you. Because remember, like each of you are going to have a different goal when it comes to your health, wellness, and self-care. So each step that you take is going to be different. So what your friend does as the next best step will be really different than what somebody else does, or maybe what's even good for you. And so the only person that knows what that next step could be would be you. And no matter what, it's the right step if you think it is. And so one of the ways, again, is just writing it down so that you can really start to figure out what it is that's most important to you at this particular time so that you can address what is most important and create a plan going forward that's going to be individualized and more in line with what it is you want at this particular time. So that's the first thing, is just kind of like get everything out of your head and really start to figure out what is important to you and what you really have to do today to get to that goal. On here we talk a lot about getting this out of our head and just kind of like creating a plan. And it's very hard to create a plan if everything is just mumbled up in your head and you have no outlet for it. So that's why making a plan is important, because the plan, getting it out of your head and really figuring out what you can do today, what you don't have to do today, frees you from that burden of carrying it around if it's not something that you want to do. But then if it is something that you want to pursue, it also will help you start to formulate kind of a blueprint of what it is that you want to do, and it gives you the starting steps. So for instance, if you're in a place that you're like, okay, I really want to start managing what I eat because eventually I have this goal that I want to lose weight and I want to eat better and I want to feel better. I know that's probably a goal that every one of us struggle with, right? So then you start to figure out, okay, like what am I overwhelmed about? Okay, I'm scared I'm not going to be able to do it. I don't know where to start. And then just write that down. And then it's like, okay, let's break this down into baby steps. What can I do today? Okay, I can go to the grocery store. I can see what I have in my fridge and start buying food that's going to get me closer to my goal of eating more fruits and veggies. More fruits and veggies are going to be something that is in line with what will make me feel better and what over time will help me achieve my weight loss goal if that's what your goal is. And so it's just this way of breaking down what you want to do into smaller steps. Because I think what a lot of us do is we basically are so overwhelmed because the goal feels so big. And so then the way to really achieve it is to take these small steps to get there. I recently saw this image on Instagram, and I'll have to see if I can find it, but if you can just visualize with me for a moment. And it was basically these two separate ladders. And the one ladder, they were the same size. One of them had maybe about like 6 stairs on the ladder. And then the other one had about 50 stairs on the ladder. And what that reminded me of, and what I want to remind you, is that having a goal that's only 6 steps to achieve, like that one ladder, it just is going to be so hard to get to your endpoint because you have so many little steps that need to happen in order to get to that first step. And so if you're able to really focus on the step that has, or the ladder that has the 50 steps, each little tiny step that you take is going to get you to the bigger goal of getting to the top of the ladder. Because for both of those ladders, the goal is to get to the top, right? It's going to be much more, I think, exciting and manageable if you're able to take the ladder with the 50 steps, because you're going to keep going because you're at a point that you've accomplished one step. Okay, great. Now I can go to the next one. And you get the motivation and the confidence in what you're doing because you are climbing each step and getting reinforcement. And so it keeps you going further and further up the ladder. If you have a ladder that only has 6 steps, it takes a long time to get to the first step. And then I think a lot of people fall off because it takes so long. And so they never get to the second step. Whereas if you have more steps in the interim, you'll get to the top quicker. So that's why making a plan is something that's helpful. It allows you to not feel so lost and to feel like you have a little bit more control of what you want to achieve and how to get there. So that's the first thing I would say. Another way to conquer overwhelm would be really to have an outlet to release the emotions that you have. So perhaps for you, writing it down, sitting down finally and writing it down and getting out of your head, perhaps that's enough. But for somebody else, it might be that you have all these emotions and you don't know what to do. For me, I have pretty bad anxiety. So when I get all these emotions and these feelings of overwhelm in my head, I also need to do some either meditating or walking or something to just get this stuff out of my head that's there, because it's just occupying so much space and time. And it just keeps floating and floating and floating around until I get it out, or I have some outlet to release those emotions. So perhaps you're in that camp with me. And so what are some things that you can do today to feel like you're able to release those emotions? Can you go and take a walk? Can you journal? Can you meditate? Can you talk to your friend? Whatever it is, just so that you're setting yourself up for a way that you are able to manage these feelings of overwhelm whenever they come to you. And you may feel like you're in a space right now where you're feeling overwhelmed all the time. And so instead of eating or having or internalizing it, really try to start thinking of some ways that are helpful to you that you can release and that you have an outlet for those emotions. And then lastly, the biggest thing I would say is to embrace imperfection. So we talk a lot on this podcast, and I know that all through the Mental Health Block series, we've talked about this idea of imperfection and embracing it, because as a perfectionist, I get this, and I'm sure you are the same. Like, you want to do everything. You want to you want it to be perfect. You want to be the perfect mom. You want to be the perfect partner. You want to be perfect at whatever you're putting all of your time into, whether that's your job or your kids, whatever it is. But this idea of being perfect doesn't exist, and it just sets us up to feel like somehow we've failed. And when you're overwhelmed and you feel like, oh my gosh, I failed at something again, it just creates more of this feeling of overwhelm, which you don't need. And so just embracing whatever you can do today is enough. Whatever you can do to get through the day and to minimize any overwhelm that you feel is totally fine, and it's enough. And if it works for you, that's all that matters, right? So embracing this idea of imperfection, because this idea of perfection doesn't exist. Now, this is something that has come up probably in all of the mental health blocks podcasts that we've done. So, I know this idea of imperfection isn't something that you can just decide, oh, I'm not going to be a perfectionist anymore. It's a lot more digging, and there's a lot of having to challenge any beliefs or assumptions that you have about yourself. And so if this is something that you continue to struggle with, as I do, I'm right there with you, then I would definitely recommend seeking the guidance from some licensed or qualified therapist, mental health professional who is out there that can help you and serve you. And as you know, I am a big proponent of therapy, and as it has been super helpful in my own life. And obviously, I am not a therapist. When we talk about our health goals, I can certainly help you with any of your nutrition goals, but with any mental health goals that you have, then seeking out the help of a professional would be something that I always recommend. If you are interested in doing nutrition counseling with me or any kind of nutrition coaching, then I am your girl. I can help you. But if it is something that's mental health, I, would probably put that into somebody's scope of practice that is more appropriate. If you are interested in doing nutrition coaching, you can find me on Instagram at Whole Health Empower, or you can find me in my Facebook group at Whole Health Empowerment Project. So I want to remind you that whole health is not an impossibility, but there's going to be some steps along this way that are going to be really uncomfortable. It's not comfortable to sit down and write and take out a book and write down what you're thinking and what you're overwhelmed about. In a life that's so busy, it's just so easy to skip that step and just continue with the same racket that's happening in your brain. I'm well aware of that. I do it all the time. It takes me a lot to sit down and do something. And perhaps you're in that idea too. But what I've learned is it just doesn't help. And then you end up having those feelings, and they just get bigger and bigger as the days go by, and you add more and more overwhelm to them unless you have an outlet to get rid of them. And so, what I would say is to do your best, do what you can do today, and just try to become consistent and try to identify ways, if this is something that you feel, try to identify what that block is and what works best for you to fix that. So this whole process is not about being perfect. It's about, being 1% better each day, because every day forward is in and towards the direction of the person that you really want to become. And you are worth taking this step. You are worth not feeling overwhelmed all the time and taking, 5 or 10 minutes out of your day, your entire day. That's nothing. You're deserving to take 5 or 10 minutes to focus on you. So do the best you can. You are worth taking this step, and be kind to yourself. I'll see you guys back here next episode.